Welcome once again to another focus on African leadership. In this episode, we are taking a look at Nigeria's President Tinubu's administration and the people, a tale of distaste and disillusionment. When Bola Ahmed Tinubu was sworn in as Nigeria's president on May 29, 2023, it was with a bold proclamation: "Subsidy is gone." That single phrase, uttered during his inaugural address, would send economic shockwaves across the nation and mark the tone of a presidency that many hoped would usher in decisive reform, but which has so far left a trail of distaste, disillusionment, and deepening despair. More than a year into his administration, the reality on the streets tells a very different story from the expectations that accompanied his rise to power. From Lagos to Kano, Port Harcourt to Jos, the verdict among many Nigerians is clear. The promised hope is now a source of hardship, the burden of sudden reform. Tinubu's swift removal of fuel subsidy, though praised by some economists as a necessary measure to free up government spending, was implemented without adequate cushioning for the masses. Overnight, fuel prices more than quadrupled. This triggered a domino effect on transportation, food prices, rent, and virtually every sector of daily living. For millions of Nigerians living on less than $2 a day, the effect was brutal. The middle class, already shrinking before Tinubu took office, found itself gasping for breath under skyrocketing costs and stagnant incomes. The organized labor unions threatened strikes, commuters walked longer distances, and traders watched their profits vanish under the weight of inflation. The administration's response? Palliatives that many described as tokenistic and disconnected from the scale of the suffering. Currency reform without a safety net. Tinubu also inherited the currency unification policy from his predecessor and doubled down on it. The result was the flotation of the naira against the dollar in the open market. Without stabilizing mechanisms or sufficient forex reserves, the naira plummeted, at times crossing 1,700 naira to the dollar. Imported goods, school fees for students abroad, and medical expenses soared beyond reach. Rather than bridge the gap between official and parallel market exchange rates, the policy widened inequality and further strained the informal economy. International businesses grew jittery, and some began downsizing or exiting the country entirely. Insecurity still persists. While Tinubu promised to secure Nigeria, particularly the northern states plagued by terrorism and banditry, little has changed. Kidnappings for ransom have persisted, and rural communities continue to live in fear of both bandits and herdsmen. In the southeast, IPOB sit-at-home orders and security tensions still disrupt economic activities, while in the oil-rich south-south, pipeline vandalism and militant threats still undermine national revenue. A disconnect with the people. One of the loudest criticisms of Tinubu's presidency so far is the apparent disconnect from the average Nigerian. His policy direction appears more in sync with foreign investors and Bretton Woods institutions than with the groaning of his citizens. Public addresses are rare, and when they do come, they often lack the emotional intelligence needed in times of crisis. Moreover, appointments to key positions have been criticized as recycling of the old guard, a circle of loyalists and familiar faces who reflect political debts rather than competence or national inclusion. A fading trust in leadership. The wave of hope that accompanied Tinubu's campaign, driven by slogans like "renewed hope," has largely eroded. Even many of his diehard supporters now admit they are struggling to defend his policies. Social media has become a battleground of grievances, with young people especially expressing dismay over what they see as promises betrayed. Unemployment remains high, brain drain continues unabated, and universities are plagued by underfunding and recurrent strikes. Many Nigerians, especially the youth, are either plotting their japa route out of the country or retreating into apathy and resentment. The elite bubble. Tinubu's administration has been repeatedly accused of functioning inside an elite bubble. Lavish spending by lawmakers and federal ministries, continued perks for government officials, and tone-deaf policy pronouncements create a perception of an insensitive ruling class. The National Assembly's decision to purchase luxury SUVs for members amid biting economic hardship only reinforced the belief that governance in Nigeria serves the few at the expense of the many. A shrinking window of redemption. Despite the widespread disillusionment, Tinubu's presidency is not beyond redemption. His government still has time to recalibrate through people-centered policies, clear communication, a strong anti-corruption stance, and genuine efforts at inclusion and reform. However, if the current trajectory continues, 2027 may not just mark another election. It may become a turning point driven by accumulated frustration and the demand for something radically different. Conclusively, it is important to state that President Tinubu's administration began with bold rhetoric and historical optimism. But as the months wear on, the Nigerian people are finding themselves not uplifted but weighed down by policies they did not fully understand or prepare for. The tale of this presidency, so far, is one of distaste for rising hardship and disillusionment, with a leadership that promised change but has so far delivered pain. The question now is whether Tinubu will listen to the growing cries of the people, or whether this will be yet another chapter in Nigeria's long narrative of failed political promises. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe, like and share for more updates on African leadership.